your relationship with your own voice really tells you the relationship that you have with yourself. We are just being put in boxes all the time and we're being labeled. But yeah, my soul doesn't want to be labeled.
And I was just like, oh my God, like it was so powerful and just my whole body was shivering.
That's what music can do, you know? It brings us closer and we open up and we become more intimate and vulnerable with each other. And in that we find that connection that we're craving for so much. Then maybe in 2 years we're like, oh my God, we were so wrong about this. That gives a whole deeper meaning. You're like, whoa. It's like...
I think it's definitely time I come to one of your workshops.
The colors of your being, they come through in the voice. They come through in the way that you express yourself.
What happened as you were peeling off these layers and like unfolding more? What was it that you found within? Welcome to the Spirit Unfolding podcast, where we explore the depth of the human experience, the creative energy that runs through us all, and what we can do to create a more beautiful world. My name is Lars, and every episode I sit down with a creative, pioneer or teacher in the fields of spirituality, art, health, and the natural world. We want to give you actionable insights to spiritual growth, taking ownership of your life and expanding your perspective on life's possibilities. Also, you can live a more authentic, loving, and fulfilling life. I am honored that you chose to spend your valuable time listening to the Spirit Unfolding podcast. And you would really help us by subscribing to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, and sharing the episode with your family and friends and on social media. Thank you so much. My guest in this very first episode of the podcast is singer-songwriter, sound healer, and musical teacher, Leonie Bos. She's been pursuing a career of sharing her soul through music since the age of 15 and alchemizes her life insights into her songs, crafting her own form of heart-opening music that invites deep reconnection. She is a powerhouse with a witty personality, a beautiful presence to be with, and a dear friend. We talked about the path that she's walked to find her own voice, what she's learned about life in the whole process, and how she's now helping others to unlock their own voice and medicine. We also went deep into the creative process, the relationships we have with ourselves, how we deal with the darker and heavier parts of life, and much more. I really enjoyed this episode, and I gained a few powerful insights, and I hope you do too. So please enjoy this first episode of the Spirit Unfolding podcast. Leonie, welcome.
Thank you. That's a very beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
And we had 2 days ago, we had a beautiful event, the premiere of your own documentary made by Sarah Dinar.
Yes.
What was it like for you to see your own story on the big screen in a room full of people?
It was very touching, actually. I've seen, of course, a lot of it already because we were also going through it, making sure that the ondertiteling was the subtitles, yeah. That they were correct, of course, you know, that was not like literally translated, but that it actually captured the things that I was really saying. So then, of course, bit by bit, I went through the documentary. So I've seen a lot of it already. But actually to be there, yeah, in the audience with a lot of people that I knew, also some filmmakers, you were there as well, you know, so people that know about movies that, you know, it's different. And of course, it was a really big screen. And there were some bits in the documentary that she added the day before that I didn't see it. So it was nice because then it stayed fresh for me in a way. Yeah, and I could relax actually, because before, every time I saw something, I was looking from the perspective of, is this correct? Or, you know, of like, creating this documentary. Of course, she was creating it mostly, but I was giving my input here and there. But I could actually sit back and watch. And then, yeah, I was actually touched a couple of times by my own story because I was just able to, you know, fully, watch it and view it with the presence of other people.
Yeah, I was touched as well because you really get to know you more personally and your story, and also the hardships that you went through with your parents.
Yeah.
And the film is called My Medicine, or The Medicine. Yeah, I really want to dive into that. Like, can you share more what that means for you, what your medicine is, your voice, and expressing that? How has that journey been?
Well, what comes now is that I actually found my own medicine when I was actually drinking medicine myself, and I was really diving into plant medicine ceremonies. Because before that, I was kind of entertainer. I went into musical theater, moved to London, trying to get in West End, and doing a lot of cruise ships. You know, the whole entertainment part of music, basically. And because of some happenings in life, you know, with my parents, and that was really forcing me to go inwards and like, okay, what is life actually about? I knew it was going to be about music, my journey. I could not imagine that I was not going to be a singer. But I actually had to let go of it as well for a moment. Like for a full year, I didn't sing at all. I just did like a, what do you say that? A 7-day or 5-day a week job somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
Because I had to actually let go of it to let go of the way that I was always doing it. The stories that I had, the image of myself being in musicals, or I had to kind of let go of that and really go inwards. And I was sometimes wrote some songs here and there, but I was a bit too scared to share it with other people. But when I started doing that more and more, and people were really touched by it, you know, getting the feedback of people like, oh, when you sing your own songs, it really hits home in a different way for me. So that encouraged me to actually continue. And I realized that every time I go through a certain process, or I give words to my inner world and the things that, you know, were rising for me to meet, instead of just like putting it somewhere or only cry about it. If I actually gave words to it with my music, I was able to process it in a very different way, to really give it meaning, because that what is rising within you just wants to be seen. So if you actually give it a song, it is being seen, you know, like so much more than only for yourself. And yeah, when you share those songs, then other people can actually also tap into their own story, you know, that maybe the song actually really triggers, you know, the things that are within your body.
Yeah.
Because that's what music does, you know, it's vibration, it's frequency. So it kind of gives movement to the stagnations within your body. And then, you know, things are rising, emotions are rising, and that's what music does, and that's why it's medicine in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is really is a beautiful way for you to bring more of yourself into the world and heal as well.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that when I just write a song, and when I'm in the process of recording it, not all the songs I record because I write a lot, but songs that I really feel like I'm gonna, you know, record it and put it on an album, I listen to them a lot in the beginning. And once they're released, I kind of stop listening to them for a while. And sometimes they come back to me and I listen to them again. But then I kind of, you know, release them into the world. And then it's like, okay, feels like, you know, releasing your children, you know, after you've given birth, like, okay, just go and do your thing now. And it's really out of my hands. And yeah, then it's really beautiful to receive, you know, feedback from other people, or that are like, oh, this song is really helping me and guiding me through my process in life. And that, yeah, that is really like a gift then for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's it like then? You've released the songs into the world, but then later you're performing them again. How's that different, or how's that feeling?
Yeah, that is like a whole next level, because we are really all together in that space. And that's why like a concert I always feel like, oh, is this a concert? Because to me, all these sessions feel more like ceremonies, because we all come together, we gather, and we step into this field of presence. And the more people open themselves up to receive the songs, the more it starts to flow through me. It's kind of like this circular movement that starts to happen. And it starts somewhere, either by, people being really fully open and receiving me, or it's because certain songs open people a bit more. And people bring their stories, energetically. And that's all in this collective field that we're in. And sometimes, the story that for me is hanging to this specific song is kind of not there. And I just feel like, it's just frequencies that I'm sharing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's still for me progressing or processing so for me, it's every time another opportunity to process another layer of this, story within, and giving these emotions more and more place. I'm just creating my own therapy sessions, basically.
And not just for yourself, but for
not just for myself. Yeah, and that's something that I still cannot really grasp yet. Like, when people come to me, like, I had to really learn that over the years. Like in the beginning, I remember, like, I was, okay, thank you for sharing that, because I was like, really, my music is really touching you, like. But now, to really get that feedback and to see people, like in the audience being really touched, is beautiful, and not like, oh, great job, but it's beautiful to see that that's what music can do. It brings us closer, and we open up, and we become more intimate and vulnerable with each other, and in that we find that connection that we're craving for so much.
Yeah, and I think also because it comes from such a deep place, like from your soul, because it comes from such a deep source, it also hits that same deep spot in other people, and maybe not in everyone, but it will hit the people that it's supposed to. I think what I've always felt with my creativity with filmmaking is like, if I make something that really comes from the heart, it will actually reach others' hearts as well. And I remember, I think the first time I actually heard you perform live was last year in your town, Hilo, and you opened with Aphrodite's song, I think it's called, and I was just like, oh my God, like it was so powerful, and so I just had like, just my whole body was shivering, and there was such a deep presence and a beautiful like build up and a balance of soft and loud and full. And I love that you shared about that in the documentary also, like you were used to with musical, like really being like using your voice to its limit, and then later that changed. So can you share about that?
Yeah, you mean like singing really loud and high and all that stuff?
Yeah, and what that actually did for you, and also then later like learning to actually be more intimate.
Yeah, for me, what I also shared in the documentary, like my time in high school and all that stuff was not easy. I really didn't feel seen at all, being in a system that wasn't really supporting of me personally, and I don't think for many young beings. And then I, to just skip some parts, it's like I got into this musical theater world, and I was like, oh, I'm actually good at something. And getting that validation was so healing for me. But after that, I was really chasing the spotlights because that's where I felt good. That's where I felt seen. And I think that's what happens with young beings or young children, that we just want to be seen by our parents, right? And they're, of course, our parents, they do their best in their way. But even before my father passed away, I don't remember a lot, because I think also the trauma of losing him in such a short time, actually, I feel like I deleted some memories, or they're blocked in a way. So I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but I do remember that I always wanted to be seen by him. I think he was really busy with just providing for us. I mean, it was not like, okay, who's that man on Sunday morning, like, or Sunday evening. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, I do think he was really trying to find his way in life as well. So I remember that I was always craving for his attention. I always wanted to be seen. And I think that's really deep underneath the layers. And probably also from my mom. I also wanted to be seen by my mom. But of course, then he passed away at this really critical time in my life as a 14-year-old girl, when you're supposed to kind of move away from your parents, because that's what you do, when you come into puberty, you naturally want to move away from them. But what happened is that he died. Yeah, he passed away. And I think I've always really did my best to be seen. And that's what I can see, in that whole period of entertainment, that I wanted to be the best. And I was able to sing really high and really loud, which in musical theater is great, because then you can go for like the lead role, because most of the time the female lead role sings really high, really, really impressive, like Wicked, for example, which is a really known musical. And especially around that time when I was trying to get in, it was all about the high notes and the powerful. And I also loved it, because for me it was also a way of allowing this life force energy to really really take its place. But yeah, it was really technical. It was just showing off in a way.
Was there also not a lot of room to bring more of yourself in?
No. No, especially in musical theater, it's just like, okay, there is not enough space for really creativity from the actors themselves. It's like, it's very directed. This is the way the character feels. You need to walk from that spot to that spot. And so there's not a lot of space to be really vulnerable in those shows, because it's really written out, everything. So yeah, really trying to find my own voice and own vulnerability really came much later in life. Like, I think that's something that I didn't really share in the documentary. I think also because of the rights of the video material, but I did like one season of The Voice of Holland.
Yeah.
In 2015.
So, it's not like Idols. It's like, it is respectful, and
yes,
and that's probably also the reason why you did decide, like, I'll give this a go.
Yeah.
It was when you were coming back from London.
Yeah. Yeah, because I lived in London for 4 years, trying to really get into the musical theater scene there. And around that time, like 2014, 2015, my mom started to become more ill. And I really felt like, okay, I think it's time for me to come home. Also because I was kind of hitting a wall with that musical theater. I was just drained of like trying to get in and not really getting somewhere. And I also felt like, okay, I have to go home now. I think it's really time for me to be more present home. But I didn't really build anything in the Netherlands. So I was like, okay, how am I gonna like get into the scene now? Because no one really knows me at all. And there were some friends of mine who did The Voice of Holland before. And I always felt like, yeah, it was respectful. With idols, people just take the piss, right? You just hope that they show you at least in the most respectful way. But with The Voice of Holland, I really felt like, okay, let's just give it a try. And I was really in the last period that they were still searching for people. So yeah, I was invited to audition, and then after I think one audition, they already said, okay, your next audition will be with the chairs.
Yeah.
And that whole period, it was like I was this girl from London. I had pink hair, and I was dressed. I really felt like I have to really be different. I have to really be special. So even my presence was,
A character.
character. Yeah, thank you. That's a really good word. Anyway, I got into the TV program with Team Anouk, and yeah, and then all of a sudden it feels like you're on top of the mountain. People started to recognize me when I was outside. Like, oh, that's Leonie from The Voice of Holland. It was the first time that ever happened to me. So, and I really felt like, oh, it's gonna happen. It's finally gonna happen, because I was still craving for this breakthrough moment. I think a lot of people that are in the music scene, they're just hoping that one day you get this breakthrough moment, and then it will all, flow with ease and grace. And
So that was why you moved to London as well.
yeah,
So it's beautiful to actually have that back home then again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But when I saw myself, on TV, and of course, at one point I was in three rounds. On the third round, and then I was kicked out, or I didn't make it. So of course I knew that I was out of the show. But then when I looked at myself, and I was already in that whole year also doing a lot of inner work, a lot of ceremonies. So a lot of layers were already falling off, and I had to work really through them. And that program was a part of that whole transformation that year, because I saw myself on that screen and I was like, who is that? Whoa, she's like, that's a Leonie that is so, trying to do her best to be someone that she's really not. And I could really hear it in my voice as well. Like all these layers, and I find it difficult to look at those videos, to be honest, because it's just a version of me, that I no longer am.
Yeah.
And it was a really crazy year, to be honest. Yeah.
It makes sense. Like, I think we all evolve throughout our lives, and we all have, no one is the version that they were yesterday, let alone 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But what happened as you were peeling off these layers and like unfolding more? What was it that you found within?
I found more space. To be more of the observer. Of course, first you find a lot of patterns that you're not aware of. You're like, oh my God. Like
The best time of spiritual awakening.
I know,
right?
it's just having to like move through all these layers, and
Yeah.
it's like, that's sometimes you have this channel, right? That we are all channels, we're all, life force is streaming through us. And, when you have this tube, for example, that is just filled with all these layers, and, when like divinity starts to stream through because you create space, it's just first a lot of mud that comes through, and you have to actually move through that.
Yeah.
And then, it creates more space, and the channel becomes more clear, and the water starts to become more clean that is streaming through. And that is what you start to find, that, okay, I am so much more than all these identifications that I build up throughout my life. And wanting to be someone special, like all these different layers. That's what I found first. And I think we go through many different awakenings in a life. I think we have you know, some people really have this one big moment where they have this kind of awakening that starts everything in motion. But it's, for me and for many people, it's not like, oh, now I'm awake.
No. That's when the process starts.
It's
It
when
never
the
ends.
process starts, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, you start to become awake of, it's almost like you're kind of like stuck, and then something, there is a bit of space, you know, but in the beginning it's just a little bit of space, and you can no longer really go back to the way you were. It's like the Matrix, right? You're taking the blue pill or the red pill. Yeah, once you've taken that, I always forget, blue pill, red pill.
Red pill.
Red pill.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way back. And you also don't want to. But sometimes it's like, oh, can I just be ignorant today?
Ignorance is bliss. You
Ignorance
think
is
sometimes,
bliss.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. Like there's always this, it ebbs and flows, but there's these moments where you're being kind of confronted with all the ways where you're holding yourself back, or you're in your own way. And to be aware of them and then to transform them, there's usually a gap of time in takes a bit of time to do that process, or maybe a lot of time.
Yeah, to integrate as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, sometimes you just, it's you at some point it's not, you can make the conscious choice to do the work, but sometimes there's also moments where you're like, I just don't want it. I just want to just be right now, and not. It's really hard to sort of tune out your awareness of those processes that you are maybe not yet where you want to be, or
How was that for you? Because before we started this talk, you were like, yeah, this the awakening process of me, and I'm not sure if we ever really talked about that before.
No, maybe
I'm
not.
curious. What happened?
Well, I've always been very curious about lots of different things and how things would work, and I've always had this, I would say, healthy disregard of authority, of sort of like just blindly going with the flow because someone says so. And I wasn't really aware of what spirituality really meant, I think, up until, I guess, when the whole like lockdowns and all that stuff happened and everyone's kind of forced to be indoors. I really had to like look inside, and I've always been running. I was on the outside, looked like a very joyful and perhaps successful guy, doing a lot of stuff I love, but I was always doing something. I was always running. I was always like traveling a lot and filming and photographing and doing all this mountain biking, and just whenever I was home, I was going out right away, and there was not really any moments for me to just sit with myself. And I just, for years, I told myself, that's just who I am. Just get the most out of life. And I think I already had a bit of I would say a mini burnout kind of thing in 2019 when I was renovating a house, and then also yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Renovating a house and at the same time working, and it all just came. It's like nothing went perfect, and it all kind of clashed on the same time. And my body just kind of gave up. And I think I slept for like 2 days, like pretty much nonstop, and then took like a couple of weeks off, and then was sort of okay again. But that was really already a wake up call of, this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And then in 2020, sitting at home, and at the same time I had a relationship where my girlfriend at the time was a very clear and mirror to me, and in ways that I wasn't really ready for at the time, but it was really showing me where I was fooling myself. And that was, I really went from, what's the words, unconsciously uncapable to consciously incapable. And that was a very testing time. I was really like, I was bullied as a kid a lot, and I think I really integrated a lot of that into like the years after. learning that it's not okay to be me, not okay to to show myself fully, that my value is in what I do, not who I am. So I was always performing and always like trying to be the best, very competitive, giving quite a bit of value to externalities and materialism.
Yeah.
And but it was also wearing me out.
Yeah.
And when I was really forced to sit down with myself, that really opened up this process of, oh God, like I think it was in the winter of 2020. I was doing a 3-day breathwork course, or like workshop, like a weekend. And in the first session, like 1.5 hours, super deep, we just felt this gaping hole and was like, I don't really love myself. Just so many tears came out, and that really broke me open. And it was painful, but it was also what was needed to start the journey to more like self-love and making priority of other things in my life. And that just kind of started it. And at the same time, I have a good friend where we talk about, like, you have this spiritual awakening, but you also have this, let's say, societal awakening, this idea that, you realize like what is happening in the world, or what you think, what always thought is happening, or the picture that's being shown by the media and everything is perhaps not really how it works. Like you say, like and I also didn't really fit into school. I did, like, for example, in university, I did like communication sciences, and there was not a lot of freedom for your own voice. It was really like you have to compare this doctrine to that doctrine, and it was very stiff, very limited. And being a creative person, I also felt there like this is not the way it's supposed to be, but I don't really know what is. And thankfully, I did find filmmaking very early on, like during my study, and was able to make that into my job, like as a freelancer.
Yeah.
So in a way, I was free in that sense, but in my head, I was still very limited and stuck to, I think based on old traumas and old ideas.
Yeah, you were designed also like that, right?
Yeah.
You're from an early age. I think in the first kindergarten, and I think this system is implemented.
Yeah.
And that's the most important. I think it's designed for a reason like that.
Of course.
The first 7 years, like, okay, let's train that brain in a way that it fits in to this system, so we can just use all these people to
use your life force really for
yeah.
not necessarily your own purpose, but the purpose of keeping the system alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really it was a good combination of these things, because like in this lockdown period, first I had a little bit of work, and then it just kind of stopped because I'm always like filming somewhere, so I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. Nothing happened. And I did a lot of meditation, and I watched so many documentaries, all this kind of occult stuff. And so it was really this sort of, it both happened at the same time. And at some point I also realized like all this knowledge is interesting, but it doesn't really serve me. Like, because it's also a lot of it, you can also go into fear of like, oh, look what's going on, and look what they're doing, and all this kind of stuff. But like, then I'm still powerless.
Yeah.
So later I realized like, no, it's actually way more about going in and finding my own strength and my own voice and my own power, and stepping into that. So that's kind of where I am now, I suppose. And I realized like probably, I think to the month, 2 years after that one breathwork session where I realized I don't love myself, I did a lot of work in between, also some plant ceremonies and just a lot of meditation and really deciding for myself, like, I'm no longer running away. When I'm finding something that is confronting, I'm going to just look at it and work with it. And the 2 years later, it was in another weekend with men's work. We did a breath work, and I just felt this massive glowing golden ball of light in my heart. I was like, oh, that love's actually always been here. So it was just a 180 flip in 2 years' time. And yes, just really try to keep that connection there.
That's beautiful. I think in that time, that whole COVID period when we were all locked up and, like, we're all fully into social media, you know. I think so many of us just went online because that's where the only place where we could find each other. But of course, so many stories started. It's just one big purge that is still going on. There's just such a massive purge of all the shit that has just been, you know, everything is being revealed now.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I also got caught up in a lot of that, which is in a way it was good to see because it helps to see like how toxic the whole system actually is. But I also feel like, okay, grabbing onto all of that doesn't actually help us in a way because it like just like when you're purging yourself, it just has to come through, you know? It's just like all the dirt that is coming out. If we keep holding on to that drag, it can actually not just come through us. It's just another grabbing.
Right. And
And
it's as everything is evolving,
yeah,
if you're holding on to what is now or what has happened,
yeah,
and especially out of fear, you're still putting in so much energy into that
yeah,
system for it to
yeah.
actually continue to exist instead of focusing on the building the new.
Yeah, and I think even there started to become a lot of, I don't want to say fights, but it's almost like a conscious war, you know? Like all the spiritual people like started to have big arguments with each other as well, you know, in a way like, oh, you're just observing and but you don't actually feel what is happening, you know? There were so many different sides starting to, you know, come, and it was like, wow, just a lot of things came to light, and a lot of separation within the different scenes, you know, started to happen as well. And that I found that also very interesting. Like, yeah, we just really want to be a part of something. You know, we want to be a part of a group. You know, that also really came to light. Like, I think that's also very natural because you know you want to be part of your tribe. That's where you're safe. And I believe a lot of people don't really, they can see that things are not okay, but they're so terrified that, okay, but if the government is actually doesn't have the best benefit for me, or yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't have my best interest at heart. Yeah.
well then my life is over.
Yeah, because it's
If I
this,
cannot trust the government, then well, then my life is over. People are really, that's for them like a death fear.
yes, and I think it is because we have grown up in a society where we've been trained from an early age. We've learned that we need all that, that we are not capable to take care of ourselves. We are not strong. We are not, like, we need to pay the taxes. We need all, like everyone else, to take care of all these aspects of our lives. And then at the same time, yeah, because we've all actually given that power away, we haven't learned to do those things by ourselves. So it has actually, we have co-created that system. And it's like, it's really, for me, what I really realized, like as soon as I really started to work on my self-love and on my ownership of where I am still not living the life that I want to live, and lacking certain skills or perspectives, as soon as I put more into that, and as soon as I grow more in my self-love, I become less attached to the system. And I care less and less, or I feel less and less how it's affecting me. And I think that's there's a saying, I don't know who originated it, but like, if you want to save the world, go home and love yourself. And I think there's so much truth in that.
Yeah. I think I also had this, I don't know if it was a belief, but really this urge to wake up the world. You know? I really felt like, yeah, I need to share my music to wake everyone up. Yeah, who am I to wake everyone up? It all starts with myself I do this for myself. I share my music because it heals me, because it gives me more contact with my own divinity. It creates more space within myself. And therefore I create more space for life to stream through me. to touch other people. And yeah, of course it's also for other people, but I do it for myself. And it sounds maybe selfish in a way, like, oh, you're just doing it for yourself. But I create for me.
Yeah.
I create for me. And if I'm too busy what other people might think of it, and of course it's a part of it. Every time I share something, I'm like, okay, of course I hope people like it. But if I create because for other people, then yeah, then I'm lost, you know. Then it's no longer creativity. Then I am just creating products, and that's how you see the music industry is now, you know, and also the film industry. And
you're also going back into a character. You're
yeah.
like you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah, and I'm an ever evolving creature, you know. People always ask me, "Oh, so what is your style?" And like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm a singer-songwriter. I create medicine music, but not like medicine music that you hear that is, you know, comes from the jungle. I create my own medicine. And I also evolve, you know, from only acoustic guitar. Like my next album has so much more different, like another flavor. And that will also expand again and transform. And I just don't want to be in a box. I think we are just being put in boxes all the time, and we're being labeled. And yeah, I think our brain sometimes needs it to label things to make sense. But yeah, my soul doesn't want to be labeled. I don't want to be labeled. Yeah, I just want to, you know, sometimes make like really like a pop song, and sometimes I want it to be really like Aphrodite song, you know, that it's just sounds coming through. And sometimes I prefer to sing in Dutch, and most of the time I prefer to sing in English. Yeah, it's an ever evolving exploration, I guess.
I love your Dutch songs also.
Yeah.
And I know for a while that there was still this dream for you that I want to focus on breakthrough internationally, focus on international, and thus sing English songs. And was it does it hit a different spot for you to sing in your own mother tongue?
Yeah, of course. It feels more. I lived in London for 4 years, and then my English, you know, was much better than now. I'm really trying to find words sometimes. Of course, Dutch is my mother tongue, and I find so many more different words, to be more poetic as well. And I actually think Dutch has a really beautiful vocabulary to really, you know, really touch a different layer of story that I feel like sharing. So in a way, I feel sometimes I'm more capable of creating these Dutch songs, but up until now, it's just English that comes through all the time. And sometimes I have this moment where something Dutch comes, but I don't. Sometimes I find it too direct, or too. A lot of Dutch songs are just so. I don't know how to explain that. Too literal.
Right.
You know, the things
not poetic enough.
Not poetic enough. A lot of Dutch songs, and then I find the English language more beautiful. So I really, when I sing in Dutch, I really want to make sure that it's really, it's not like a literal translation. You know, I find a lot of Dutch songs to be like, it's not really written beautiful. You know. So only when I really stand behind the lyrics, and when I really feel like this is really close to my heart, and it's also a little bit more storytelling than literally what I'm saying. You can really hear the different layers in it. Then I really love to share those songs.
Yeah, I love that, like the using like the metaphors
Yeah.
and that was what really makes it poetic for me. And
Yeah.
I love that. Also, like, obviously as a filmmaker, I work with that a lot, and I saw Sarah do that in film as well. Like, it's your story, but there's also a deeper story of a journey that most of us have gone through in our lives. And I love that in your songs as well. Like in your medicine, that's also the title of the documentary. Like, you talk about building these ladders, and obviously you're not building physical ladders, but we all have an idea of like what you're talking about, and what their process is and how that feels. How is that whole process for about like creativity for you to create the music, to let the voice come through? How is that process?
Songwriting for me goes really, really in line with the melody. So most of the time I have an insight, or I hear a certain sentence. A lot of times when I'm on the way, when I'm physically moving, either running or driving, which is sometimes really annoying because then I don't have my instruments. I have a lot of these weird voice notes in my phone that are like, la, 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 you know? And then I forget to listen to them. And then sometimes I take the time, or like, oh yeah, that was actually really cool. And then I pick it up. So it's kind of like, it's almost like the song is presenting itself, and I have to kind of, I think, I don't remember who wrote that book, but Big Magic.
I don't know that
It's
one.
the one from Eat, Pray, and Love, I think. That woman. Sorry, I'm not so good with names. But she wrote Big Magic, and I think it was in her book that she shared about the creative process. And for her, that was, of course, writing. That sometimes you just have to really grab the tail strongly and really focus, and then you kind of pull it through. And that's annoying when I'm on the way, or when I'm running and I don't even have my phone with me, because then I have to repeat it again and again and again until I'm home. Otherwise, it's gone. And it really, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like I can feel it already slipping away, even though I'm still singing, and like, and then I'm like, okay, well then it might come back later, or it goes to someone else. And then that other person will create that song. So I believe it's really in the collective, these creations, and it's up to us to download them. But we, of course, translate it. So the energy is kind of like a pure energy. Because a lot of artists say, like, it's not me. It was not me who wrote the song. Yes, it's you, because it came through you with all your, all your memories, all your life experiences, and you as a soul. So yeah, if that energy comes to you, it will be a completely different song, maybe with the same meaning, but very different words, very different, So I'm the one who translated it through my system. So most of the time, then, when I'm able to grab my guitar, I immediately just, start playing some chords. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it. And most of the time, it just comes out the whole song in one go, because it's kind of like a download. And that sounds maybe like, a bit far-fetched, or like spiritual or fluffy or whatever. Yeah, but that's the only way I can really explain it.
Yeah. It's not, you're not actively doing work to think it into existence, but you open up and it just comes in.
Yeah, and at the same time, I do keep like rhyme rabbits Google, and I'm like, okay, I wrote this word, what rhymes, so I look it up, and then I'm like, because I don't have all of that in my brain,
And then when the word comes, another sentence comes.
Yes.
And then it starts the flow again. And
and I'm like, oh, but if I use that word, then I can actually make this metaphor, so then I am actively songwriting. And
to me, it feels like a conversation with the universe.
Yeah.
Like you're really co-creating. And like you say, it's definitely bringing in all of yourself, all your experience, your skills, your own filters as well. And then opening as well to whatever comes in.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that with some songs, I'm not really sure about certain sentences, but I keep them because I don't know what else to do. And then later on, they're like, oh my God, that's why I wrote that. It's so funny. Like, there are even songs that I wrote like on my first album which is called Live and Acoustic. And actually, I started with my own music, and then I made this album with mantras and sacred songs. And now I'm again fully making an album with only my own music. And then years later, I sing this song somewhere, and then all of a sudden it makes all the sense in the world. And it's like, oh, I wrote it for this moment, you know? But then maybe in a few years I sing it somewhere else, and then I have that same feeling. So then it's an everlasting, you know, kind of creation and medicine that comes back again or gets a completely different meaning. And I think the more people start to wake up, they start to listen to music in that way. Because also a lot of love songs that people are writing about another person, when you start listening to it from the perspective they wrote it to themselves, that gives a whole deeper meaning. You're like, whoa. It's like, you know? And they're not even maybe awake to that, but it doesn't matter, because if you are, then all these really poppy love songs, they start to become really spiritual songs, actually.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, all the expression and the interchanging we have, communication with other people is also with ourselves in a way.
Yeah.
I really, like at the beginning when I first heard this concept, I was always like, it's too like out there and it sounds like crazy and you can only recognize what you have inside and all that kind of stuff. But like later on, like as more and more I start to really feel that that's true. That like what I love about like certain aspects that I love about another person is actually something that I might find hard to love about myself. But it's beautiful to use the interaction with other people and with the world to get to know yourself better and to transform, your life, your soul in that way, to grow.
Yeah, we need each other to make sense of ourselves, in a way. I think, like recently, my last ceremony that I participated at, I really came to the oneness of there's only me. There's really only one. And in a way, there was a lot of fear connected to that, because I was really like, but then I'm all alone. You know, so that's, of course, the identified person that feels alone, you know, because presence doesn't feel alone. But it can be, when you really come to that point, it can start to feel, it can feel quite lonely. Because you realize I'm actually having a conversation with just an aspect of myself at the moment. And at the same time, we are all here in this simulation, you know? So there's no one truth. But I think if you hear these things and you read them in books, then you're like, okay, well, you kind of feel like, oh, it feels a bit true, but you need to actually experience to make it your own truth. And then still it's very different, my truth than your truth, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a very different experience that we all have. But I do believe that we really need each other, and that, to connect with each other and to experience ourselves through the other person, through the other people around you.
Exactly. I think also what you touched on earlier was like this idea that then you're awakening, but then there's all this other, like said, let's say spiritual camps or whatever. Like there's still like people are still fighting over what is the one thing or
what is the one truth.
Yeah, and of course there is actually if you're actually actively harming other people or other beings, obviously that is a thing that is hard to just stand by and say, oh, that's just another aspect of, that's the way it's supposed to be. And at the same time, if we step back another layer, it's actually possible to really feel or experience the idea that, well, if I would be in that place and if I would have experienced all the hardships and the trauma and everything that person has been through, do I really know that I would make a different decision, do a different action than that person? And just this layer of deeper understanding and compassion, it's really helped me to move away from judgment more and more, and just see more that, like you say, we're all one. We're all part of the at least part of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that what like forgiveness is about? It's not about like, I mean, if we would have had a relationship in the past and you would have broke my heart, like forgiveness is not about that I forgive you for what you might have done, but it's like forgiving the situation because it actually brought me closer to myself. I believe that the people that might hurt you in a life, your exes or, like any kind of person that might have hurt you or people that passed away that actually broke your heart. It's almost like, when you come back when you step out of this simulation, I call it the simulation because that's kind of like makes sense for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like we're all like with our heads in this simulation. In this simulation, and then when we pass, we just take away our heads and we look at each other like, whoa, what the hell was that? Did that really just happen,
Did you really believe that?
Yeah, whoa, you were really identified. Yeah, me too. No, but it's like, yeah, I believe that when we pass, we just continue in a different form, I think this is just a world where we can experience certain things. Okay, before I lose what I wanted to say, yes, it's like making this agreement with a certain soul, like, oh, I really want to incarnate and really like let the divinity through in this, in this earth, that we are. And in order for that to happen, my heart needs to break open wide. And in order for that to happen, maybe someone actually needs to break my heart open. And that is a painful act, but it's actually the most loving act a soul can do, right? And I know that's really difficult to say in certain situations where a lot of violence is there. And to come to that point, yeah, sometimes we need to break our hearts again and again and again and again until we really get that almost like final sledgehammer to knock us down. And we can really no longer fool ourselves or kind of crawl back and like stitch it all together, and then we continue.
Do you think those, let's say, heartbreak moments or those heavy hardships are needed, like you say, to become heavier and heavier, or is there also a way to learn more about life, or like experience the fullness of life without, or of yourself without going through these things, like with surrendering more to what is, or any other modalities?
I think life is giving us opportunities again and again and again, but we don't often see them. And then later, like, okay, life was already giving me a lot of opportunities to actually make a different choice. And when we start seeing that, I think the more we become aware of that, the more we become awake to that, it will get easier and easier because we start to see the signals sooner. But when we don't see those earlier signals, then life is like, okay, well, then I have to be more loud for you to actually see it. But it's you that actually, it's not like, it's the universe conspiring, but you are the universe. So I can really feel that, okay, I carry this deep grief inside of me of losing my father. In order for me to actually feel that, because I have so many coping mechanisms and protective mechanisms, that were really good, because otherwise I would have fallen apart as a 14-year-old girl, so they were necessary. But later in life, it's like, okay, this is no longer working. I'm like a robot, I'm not a robot, but I'm stuck, Okay, so then I need that other person to really break me open. But it's kind of the energy in me that really wants to come up, that is drawing this person in to break it open so it can be released. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the resistance is like, you broke my heart and you did this and you did. And of course, it's a collaboration between, it's not only, for the other person, it's also a healing process, It's a collaboration in that. But to really start to take ownership over, okay, this is my pain. Yeah, that's really a process. And I wasn't capable of doing that, before. A little bit.
This would be very special if you would be able to do that when you're 14.
Yeah, that's true.
So
No, but even later in life, like, yeah, you really fall into like a victim mode, like, oh, this happened to me. And yeah, I really dealt a lot with like that victim mode, to feel like, oh, this is all like happening to me, and why, and all these people coming to my life, and why is it never happening? And yeah, to really start making that switch, like, okay, I'm the owner. I have ownership for myself.
what if I chose this?
What if I chose this? Yeah.
What would that mean? And what can I learn? I had that, like I said shortly, when I was being bullied as a kid. So when it was like the last few years of lower school, I was one of two kids that was like very good at math and allowed to sort of skip a class. And that, and probably a combination of other things. I was a very shy kid. I was the youngest of the class. I was quite small, at least in my memory. So like up to a certain point, later I became tall. I was being bullied and like emotionally, but also actually physically, and like being like kicked with a couple of boys around me and that kind of stuff. And that really instilled for a long time this, first it all pushed it away, and then at some point in this like beginning of this awakening, it really came back up again. And there was a lot of this realization what actually happened, and then also going into victim mode, like, oh, they did that to me. And then later I started to realize, well, that actually made me who I am. I'm actually quite happy with who I am. And it made me there was this need to always perform and be competitive, which is perhaps not healthy to always be in that energy. And at the same time, that allowed me to build a life that I really love and be a successful filmmaker and all these other things. So in a way, I also have them to be grateful for shaping me. And once that landed, and then with my coach a couple of months ago, this realization of I can actually fully forgive them, because I also know that they had their baggage and they had their path that made them that they were not capable of doing anything else. They were also just kids. They were probably also not seen or heard, maybe having a difficult situation at home or anything else. And to just really tap into that, like, I fully not just forgive you, but thank you for that. That was such a big release, and I really felt a lot of connection and a weight dropping away. And yeah,
you really need to really feel that, right?
Yeah, it's hard
Because that's sometimes in the spiritual scene. It sounds a bit stupid, but like we get this like, oh yes, I need to forgive them, or I'm grateful for them, but you don't actually feel it. But it needs to be a really like a revelation from within, an experience from within to actually. And maybe when you meet, this person on the street one day, you might feel still a bit of like, whew, And then it's just another layer that is able to let go, but to actually to fully come to that point is so healing. To experience that from within.
Yeah.
And to see it from a bigger picture, but you cannot just jump to that bigger picture.
No, you need to go.
You need to
through
actually,
all the steps.
yeah.
You're also doing these voice liberation workshops, or voice of freedom, or however we should call it.
I gave it different names every time.
Yeah. I can imagine in that where you're inviting people and you're helping people to really bring forth their voice. There's also this process of uncovering things that they've been hiding or pushing away for a long time. So how is that process for you to guide, and how did you sort of grow into that?
I think it's when you like the student becomes the teacher, right? I think at one point, I think also with this podcast, you just, at one point you can share from your own experience and help other people on their path. And like having that transformation within myself from stepping from that entertainer to a more authentic version of myself, and allowing my most truest and rawest voice to come through instead of like a version of it or a character, gave me the opportunity to provide or to create this space for other people as well. And having to go through all, or not having to, because I chose it, having the privilege to go through these ceremonies where the medicine was really helping me to come to that inner voice. Because in those ceremonies, I was really still singing from a different, identification of, having to prove myself. I had to sound good, especially in such a small and intimate setting where everyone is just being stripped naked to the bone, and being fully on medicine, being fully on in a deep journey of ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Having to sing, and it was many times it was spectacular to be able to let all of that, all of me, just through the voice. But it was also a lot of times so uncomfortable, because there were many times where I just wanted to sound beautiful. I was just singing a song and I just wanted to sound beautiful, and then it was almost funny because I had this conversation with the medicine or with my higher self, like, oh yeah, you're really gonna do that line right now? Okay, good luck. And then, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then I would go completely out of tune, which was so uncomfortable because like, oh my God, this is so awful. And then just to surrender, to not wanting to be perfect. So, and I could really feel it clicking in a different channel, like more my own channel instead of that other road that I was taking all the time. So, and the only way that I was able to release my own voice, like that, to liberate my own voice, was just to move through all those layers. And there were a lot of layers, I can say. So then I started to realize, okay, I can also guide others through this, because this is now my experience and I understand how it works, in a certain way.
Yeah.
So I can kind of recreate that situation for other people. So yeah, I started creating this either day retreats or workshops where I almost create in a way the same situation for them to move through it, because it's not so much about how the voice comes out, but it's really about, yeah, what I also say in a documentary, about the moment like, okay, I'm gonna share my voice in any moment now.
What is coming up?
What's coming up? And can I be with that? And can I observe that? And what is actually happening when I have to sing or sound? It's not so much about singing. Sometimes it is, but it's
kind of vocalize the process of what's happening inside.
Yeah, and then to give that process to the voice. And that's the healing part of the voice, because the moment we give voice to what's happening inside, we transform it. That's the medicine, because we actually give it a voice. We give it a platform. We give it a stage, so it can fully be seen, can be heard, can be tasted, can be, is present. And that's all an energy actually really wants, is to be fully seen. And then it transforms into, wherever it goes. And we become a bit more empty and we liberate ourselves. And that's when we create space. And yeah, I think that's why they call it voice liberation.
Yeah, I loved in the documentary, you shared a few examples of, we see this as well, where one person has this idea of like, oh, I'm going to do I'm going to do great. I'm going to like really show myself. And then
Yeah.
when the moment is there, they're completely locked up.
Yeah.
Or someone else is like the other way around. And then when it actually happens, they actually feel this, like there's not fear. There's just openness and freedom and strength.
Yeah, you have the opposite as well. You have people that are really doing this because they actually really want to be heard, but they're like, ooh. And there are people who are doing the opposite, so they almost scream.
Ah,
You know those people, right? That are really attention seekers. I've been like that as well because I wanted to be seen so much, so I just overdid everything, So I just always wanted to be in the center of attention. And that's also actually a way of not fully allowing your vulnerable self. So there are different movements that people do. And I find that sometimes even more difficult than people that are kind of shying away, because then you can invite them, okay, come on. But actually to say to someone, can you be less? That's then interpreted a lot of times like, I'm not allowed to be here. It's like, no, you are allowed to be here, but this version that you're showing is not who you truly are. You're
so can you be more truthful to yourself?
Yes. Do you see that you're actually like portraying a version of yourself that is not your authentic self?
Holding
or
up
can
a
you see
mask.
that this is a layer or a mask? And that I find that sometimes even more tricky, because I have to be really careful to not fully scare someone away, to be really sensitive to that. To be honest, I find that more difficult. Yeah.
Perhaps when someone is really holding back, they are actually aware of their vulnerability or their mask. And when someone is like fully into the mask, it's not an active awareness. So as soon as you actually put them on, like bring them aware of that in that moment, it's a big shift. It can be,
I learn a lot from other people. Like I was doing a lot of one-on-one sessions before. I don't have the space to do that anymore, but I was learning so much about myself and so much, about a coach in doing these one-on-one sessions, because they were giving me, all the lessons basically, and all the teachings came through working with other people. That's how I learn, That's why we really need each other in that way. And that, I really, really love doing that, because I grow so much also in my work with the voice in that way. And that's why it always feels like equal. It's not like I'm the teacher and I am, I'm having a student. I also feel most of the time really like a student when I work with other people, because I'm learning from all of the people that are coming to my sessions.
I think that's true for life in general, right? If you're
really
open to it, everyone is able to teach you something.
Yeah.
Even if it's how you not want to live your life. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your relationship with your voice?
I've come to like it more and more. I think it's definitely time I come to one of your workshops. Yeah, I do like to sing just by myself or like in the car or whatever. It's different. It's interesting because there's layers to it, right? There's, okay, what the sound of my voice, but it's also like, what is my authentic voice? What is it that I'm saying? What is it that I have to bring? And I think for a long time I was unsure if it would actually be valuable to others, and I would keep my voice quite to myself. But as I was experiencing it more and more, first through filmmaking and having certain projects that are not for clients, but just for myself, first and foremost, and then sharing them, that taught me to love my voice more and more, also because I got reflected back that it's actually nice. It's a unique voice that has value as well. And then later on, doing a couple of years ago, I did a podcast with a friend together. So that really also taught me a lot, listening back to all those conversations, like, oh yeah, what am I bringing? And also that's when I really started to first accept and then love the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, how was it to hear your voice for the first time? I mean, was that the podcast, or was it because you maybe filmed yourself once before?
Yeah, I did some narrations for videos before, and now I really only do documentary style work, so not really a lot of scripted stuff, but I've done some like scripted commercials, and I would always do the voiceover for like a first edit, and then when a client was like happy with the cut, then we would like hire a voice actor to do the actual thing. And it happened a couple of times that they actually said, when after the voice actor was recorded, they said, we prefer your voice. So that was interesting, because I just have this, I know, I feel like I have a good feel of bringing in my emotion and a certain energy into what I'm saying. And I'm very specific. Like I have this idea of, I'm vocalizing a certain feeling, and I have an idea of like, it needs to be expressed in that way for it to work. Something you probably recognize. And if someone did it in a different way, I was like, no, it needs to be like this. And yeah, in that process, I really started to recognize more and more that, I actually have this capability to do that really quite well. And then also with guiding men's circles for the past year, doing a lot of guided meditation, also a lot of men reflected back, like, you have this soothing, calm, grounded voice most of the time. And so I started to like it more and more. And I really noticed how it's changing also. Like over the past years, in doing more spiritual practice and being more grounded and being more in my body, like with my whole awareness, my voice is more relaxed and lower. Starting to like it more and more. Yeah. But I don't have a lot of control in terms of singing. I don't have a lot of technique. So 2 days ago at your performance, you also invited everyone to sing along at certain moments, and some places went really well, and then at some moments I was like, I better just not go there. Not just yet, but I used to be like ashamed, and now I'm just having fun with it. So it's a big difference.
I also believe that it's kind of like when I invite people I have this exercise where we're all in a circle, and then one by one I invite people to come into the circle, and they start making sound. It's not so much about singing, but it's really about making sound, like their most rawest version of their voice, without trying to sound in a specific way. And when they do that the first time, it's scary, and they move through these layers. And then when they do it a second time, they already moved through those layers. So it's a bit more easier, but it's not easy, but it's a bit more, they already moved through those layers. So even if you have done it already 20 times with me, every time you will discover a new layer of that, and that's kind of like recreating that moment of having to, just step up and just do it and give what is rising to your voice so it can transform. And I think it's an ongoing journey. I still also I think your relationship with your own voice really tells you the relationship that you have with yourself. And it can really show you, for me, that's also still an ongoing journey. I'm not perfect in that at all. Even though I work with the voice, I catch myself a lot on, like, I was not good at school, so I really have this belief that I'm dumb, that I'm really not good enough at, I had to do all these, like, you were really good at math. For me, that was like really awful because I finally understood it. And then I was sitting there in a class having to do this test, and I blocked, and then I was just crying, and then I got like a 3, like a 3, like you
3 out of 10,
3 out of 10. We had like, so, and like all these stupid subjects. I'm like, why in God's name I had to do those stupid subjects? Like, I don't do anything with that in my life. But also when it comes to language, like if I cannot find the words that I want to say to express what I want to say, then there is this thought coming through me like, oh, I'm dumb, So yeah, I'm also still finding my relationship with my voice. And the more calm I am, the more grounded and the more closer I feel to myself, you will hear that in my voice. And I'm quite comfortable with you because my voice is quite low now at the moment. And and we have this mutual friend, Marloes, and I think her voice is one of the voices that I love listening to the most. I think she's really close to herself in a way that when she speaks, she also really takes the time. And I sometimes I'm really rushing, because I just, So it's really like, it really shows you the relationship and all the what you're made of, in a way. All the layers, the identifications, the colors of your being, they come through in the voice. They come through in the way that you express yourself. And that evolves when I listen to myself, from way back, like recordings or what I said before, like the videos of The Voice of Holland. It's like, it's a completely different version of me. And I can really see the progress I made over the last years. And that evolution, that's what you can hear in someone's voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still unlocking new parts of like the voice in terms of technical, or is it more like emotions, or like in that sense more part of yourself that you continue to explore?
Both. Because when it comes to liberating my voice, there I'm still unlocking. Like, I'm not there. Like, I think it's a never-ending exploration of new layers. And technically, because I'm professionally performing, there was this one point where I felt like, oh, my voice is so free, I never have to do like warm-ups again, but that's really not true. Like, I had this period where I was just not performing a lot. And like singing, professionally or even not professionally, even if you're an amateur singer, but you just perform, it's muscles that you need to train. I always use this metaphor of being a marathon runner. You don't just go running. You don't just, if you run a marathon right now, you completely injure yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to train step by step. And there's a lot of things that, you learn about. I still have a vocal coach that I go to. And it's about sometimes having to sing a word a bit differently, because technically that will be much more healthier for my voice in the long term. There's so many technical aspects that when you're singing and you have to sing for 3 hours or 2.5 hours, like seven days a week, for example, when I was working on the cruise ships, there was not 2-hour shows, but there were like 1.5 hour shows every evening, sometimes 2 shows. And my voice was in the best shape because I was constantly training my voice. And now if I have big gaps in between concerts, I need to sing at least 4 times a week, like 1.5 hour, to keep it in shape, because it's just muscles, and to remember myself, okay, if I sing, here's to the woman, if I really sing that word woman, sometimes it helps me to sing woman, because then, because I hit a certain note, if I then sing woman, then I can feel, ooh, it's not great. If I have to do that once, it's fine. But if I have to do that every night, then I started to lose my voice a bit, and I started to become really husky, and I was like, what's happening to my voice? And then I was like, oh, what's going on? What kind of trauma wants to rise? It's like, no, You just need to train your voice. You know, it's just as simple as that. So yeah, it's kind of like trying to find that balance. Like, okay, is there actually something within me that needs to be, you know, addressed, or am I technically just not on point? You know. So sometimes, you know, people are like, I have a blocked voice because every time I, you know, sing along with your mantra singing circles, like, oh, I feel so much pain. It's like, yeah, but you're not used to sing for 2 hours, you know? So it's also normal that you start to feel that at one point. Also in these singing circles, I don't do them a lot anymore, the mantra singing circles, but you know, you're all close to each other. You cannot really hear yourself that well, so you're even putting more, you know, effort on, you know, you're raising your volume, and you know, so that starts to hurt at one point because you're also not using your tummy, you're not using a certain technique, because most of the people that come to the singing circles, they don't know about these techniques.
Yeah.
So then it's also normal that you start to feel that on your voice, you know. So of course, I have a lot of people say I have a blocked throat chakra. Okay, do you really have a blocked throat chakra, or is there something else going on and your throat just says like enough? You know, so it doesn't always mean that you have a blocked throat chakra. It can just mean that something is rising and your throat just says like, ooh, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Or it comes actually because your solar plexus is kind of like, ooh, you know, or
you don't know how to breathe properly, or you're just tired in that spot, or like,
and it's like, you know, sometimes when emotions rise, like the throat chakra is an energy center that closes and opens really quickly. Like it can quickly really make that shift. So when the protective mechanism kind of kicks in, because, you know, in Dutch we have this saying like het grijpt me bij de keel. Like it's, I don't know how to translate it in English, but it's like,
it
yeah,
grabs me by the throat.
It grabs me by the throat, but that's the literal translation of
it. You really feel like there's like pressure being put right there in a certain moment, to the point that it's like debilitating.
Yeah, and I think it also has to do with, you know, we're so trained to solving things with our brain, and the heart and the brain, you know, in the midst is our throat chakra. So where does the emotion go? You know, when it cannot fully just go there, it you know, you try to make sense with your brain, but it actually wants to go to the heart. But the heart is like, ooh, let's not do that, you know. So it's kind of like a, you know, and this is the bridge in between. So
it's also a lot about like sort of sinking more into the body and connecting to, let's say, the body's intelligence, or the
yeah, and they say that the distance between, you know, the brain and the heart is the longest journey you have to make in a lifetime. And I still don't know the answers, because you know, that's also the thing with, you know, we're creating this podcast and we're both saying a lot of things right now in this podcast, and maybe in 2 years we're like, oh my God, we were so wrong about this. You know, like, I really thought that the throat chakra was like this and this and this. And then 2 years later, you're like, oh, that's actually, you know, so it's like an ongoing exploration. And, you know, also with books, sometimes you read these books and you're like, oh, this writer really thought that it was like that, you know. And also writing songs or creating a movie, you know, it's like you put something into the world, but it was really for that time. And sometimes I wish I could just like record something again, because now I would do it so much, so differently. And yeah, but that's also,
it's also a thing of loving that part of that version of yourself.
Yeah.
That was maybe lawfully ignorant in some places, but also beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I want to dive into with a little bit with you is you have one song called Witch, which is really about the women that have gone through hardships over the last centuries perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where did that song come from, and how how does that, what place does that have for you in not just your life but also in, you think, the society as a whole? Because we're moving from this paternal to maternal energy in the world, in a way.
Yeah, for me, this song, before I go into the creation of this song, for me, this song is still an ongoing journey. I also try to let go of that story, because I believe that when we keep holding on to a certain story, then we also keep it alive. So yeah, there have been a period in our history of more than 300 years that we kind of forgot about. But it was, can you imagine 300 years where women were being put on a pile, being burned alive or executed in the most horrific ways, in the name of being a witch? Bing. And I dove into that, of course. Honestly, when did I write this song? That is one of the songs that I just created without really understanding why. There are certain songs that are kind of like, oh, I'm going to write about this story. And of course, it also reflects me. But that's one of the songs that is still, for me, medicine. And but yeah, there's been this long period where I believe on purpose, the masculine force, and I'm not only saying men, but a masculine force implementing this system that we are now currently living in, that is currently also falling apart. I think also that's why this song is right now, in flying out there in the world, and that's why it was created in this time, where they started to implement this system, because we were so much more in contact with nature. The women that were in Holland, we say vroedvrouwen, they were doing the births of the women, the doulas, and even they wanted to, swap. They wanted to implement a completely different system, like a medical system. The masculine wanted to be in charge. So the wisdom of the women had to be erased, because it was danger for them. So it's been like 300 years of killing women. And in some countries, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of women. And I dove into that a bit, not fully, because it's quite intense. And I believe it's a wound that we're still healing within women, but also men, because I don't really know about incarnation. I don't have the experience of knowing that I've been here before. Some people have. I don't have that knowing within me. But if that is what it is, then yeah, we've had many different forms. I've been a woman, I've been a man, I've been an animal. So I believe we carry this within our cells, within our DNA, our ancestors. There's been a lot of suppression, and over the last years, the feminine is trying to break free again from that. The rising of the divine feminine. I also feel that's why I want to let go of the story, is that you have to stop blaming the man. Because yes, it's something that we need to acknowledge. But we also keep the story alive by staying in that victim, like we were murdered and we were suppressed. It's like, okay, yes, but now take ownership. Just rise, because you have it within you. As a woman, start to rise now. You have that power within you. And if we keep staying in that victim mood and we keep blaming our man, then they don't feel, the space to actually stand within their strength, or to be like, okay, yes, maybe that happened. Me personally, as a man, you personally didn't do that.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of women who feel that wound, and they really need to put the blame outside of themselves. So for me, this song is about honoring the women that have been put on the pile, that have been through this, that sacrificed themselves, because I believe on a soul level it's been a sacrifice for the greater purpose of our evolution. But it's mostly a song to just stand within your inner witch power now, to reclaim that again, because witch originally means wise woman, and I think it's important that we just take ownership of that ourselves. Like, feel the wound, stay with the feeling, feel that pain, and then just tap into that inner power that you have, that inner wisdom, because it was always there. You cannot, what's the words that I sing? You cannot like diminish the woman. It burns into 1,000 pieces, but it will always be there. You cannot diminish it. You cannot kill the feminine. It's not. It's just not possible. It's like,
it's part of this reality.
Yeah, it's part of the reality, the feminine and the masculine, and it's not into the woman or the man. We both have that inside of us, right? The feminine and then the masculine. So most of all, it's a song to just re-empower ourselves and to embody that inner wisdom again, and to know that we, in every cell of our being, is God, is presence, and to not put it outside of ourselves and be, afhankelijk. Dependent on something outside of yourselves to stand within your strength. I believe that we are God, and
not this, I would almost say outdated, but at least like one point of view of this like supreme being that reigns over you from the sky, that is gonna like punish you if you do or not do this or that. But it's like, it's this energy that's within everything and everyone.
And I think there have been over like centuries, a lot of people have been incarnated to tell us, to say, you have it all in you. I'll show you that it's possible, but you all have it in you. And I think it's been just so wrongly interpreted over so many, with all the different religions, and we are having this is the truth. And it's like, it's painful. I find it painful. Even, it's almost scary to talk about this, because I'm like, we have to be careful. But even the new Jesus movement right now, people that have really walked the spiritual path, and, I think people that have been really trying to find something to hold on to, and then they find this, they're being captivated by the teachings of Jesus. And I almost feel that then again it's being interpreted wrongly again. Like, no, he's showing up to show you, like, you have it all within you. We're the same.
Yeah, if you fully lean into that, then again you're kind of robbing yourself of your power. You're not acknowledging.
You're giving it away again. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking to see that people are giving it away again. And then I feel like, okay, but then you haven't fully touched your essence from within. Or maybe you have, but then in some way you still want to be, again, afhankelijk. Cannot find this word. Dependent. You want to just have a savior. I also really feel like, just save me, like I feel like sometimes I feel like, cannot do it anymore. Can someone just sweep in and just
Do the hard part for
do
me.
the hard part for me, please, And I'm not saying that. That's why I find it tricky to talk about this, because I'm just, everyone is free to do what they want in this simulation that we are. Please do your thing. It's your experience. It's your life. So just,
Yeah, I agree. Like it's really hard to, like, it's still from an external perspective. You don't know or feel or experience what someone that is on that path
exactly
is experiencing.
And maybe next year I'm a fully Jesus believer and I'm all like, I'm saved. But I find it, I don't know, it hurts me. For some reason, it hurts me to see people that, and also the thing that hurts me is that a lot of them are like saying that all their spiritual things and it's just from the devil, and that's something that I find painful, because it's like, okay, it's fine that you come to this point in your life, and if that's really your truth, then no one needs my blessing, but you have my blessing. But to make everything that you went through before wrong or work from the devil, that I find that difficult, because it's because of that you come to that point. So you can also honor it, because of all these, spiritual teachings or the things I went through, I found Jesus, like, then that's great, but don't make it wrong,
Yeah.
It's the same as me saying, oh, my voice back in the day was just so awful. It's like, yeah, but look at her, she was going through all those things. And because of that, I am where I am right now.
Yeah.
But I find it difficult to see that people give their own presence away. They give their own light away to, yeah. Anyway, let's close that circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. I think it's like a lot of what my journey has been, and what I also see with the men that I guide, that I facilitate for in the men's circles, is really about just really coming back to yourself, or stepping into yourself, and really acknowledging that it's always been you. Like, you have a lot more power, and not to go say like, oh, it's okay to be egomaniac, or it's okay to exercise that power over someone else. That's not what I'm saying. But like, yes, we all need each other and we all do this together, but you don't have to be dependent on someone else. And that's also, I think, in relationships, and for me, like previous relationships, that's also something that where I was first unconsciously and later consciously in part of that dynamic. It was like, I need her to be a certain version or do a certain thing for me, because I can't give that version of love to myself or that part. And as I was going through that, and like more and more, and now in my current relationship, I really feel like, yes, we love each other, and we in a way need each other in our lives, but we don't need each other to fill a gap in the other person. And I feel like that is, it's so tricky, like, because it's so comfortable to have someone take care of you in that sense.
Yeah.
But in the end, in the bigger picture, in the long term, it's not actually serving you.
No, you keep each other's patterns alive.
Yeah.
You keep each other. If you don't have the ability to really look at your own shit, the other person is mirroring it for you. And so many relationships, they just, they pass so quickly because we don't want to deal with it, what the other person is showing us. It takes courage to actually stay together and move through that sometimes. And I think that's, what a conscious relationship is about, right? Not even conscious, but maybe conscious. But I feel like in the spiritual scene, one thing I want to say about that, what we were talking about before, like, I think there is a lot of crap going on. Also in the spiritual scene, there's so much fluff happening. And the mind or the ego is just so clever. It just finds another costume to wear to be going on and to stay in the comfort zone, or to not actually have to deal with something, and I think that's what, a lot of people from that new movement, they're saying the new age, it's toxic and it's from the devil. I think that's a bit too extreme. But I do think that there's just a lot of fluff happening. And it's just, the ego just found another, way of staying
in control, protecting itself.
Yeah, and not fully looking, okay, if I just do 10,000 breathwork sessions and then I come to this point of bliss, oh my God, I'm so conscious. It's like, no, are you actually meeting your shit inside? Are you actually dealing with your family? Or, like you're hopping from one relationship to the other relationship. Oh, I'm open relationships and, all that. There's so much stuff happening.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it's just taking ownership of your stuff. And it's easy to space away in the bliss and in the ignorance. And just walking around with incense and feathers in your hair.
Like you talked about a couple of days ago. So yeah, I think it's just for an ever-going unfolding that, right? Like it's not like, oh, at one point, I don't know, like maybe for like someone like a Ram Dass or someone that it would be considered enlightened, it perhaps is a different experience. I don't know, but I feel like there's always more to learn and there's always more to discover within yourself and to accept and to surrender to. And I feel like as soon as you have the idea or the belief that you've got it all figured out, as soon as you realize that, it's probably a good idea to like zoom out a little bit and be like, is it me or is this the ego talking? And
yeah, I think that's a massive red flag.
Yeah.
When you're like, I know the truth.
Yeah, but it's interesting because also in this whole process of what we talked about in the beginning, like this, when you have this spiritual awakening or the societal awakening, like, oh, look at all the corruption and like all this kind of stuff. And you kind of want to show everyone when like, oh, you have to know this, you have to wake up. Like, I know this. And of course, there's someone that's 4 years further down the road that looks at you like, oh, you're still, we all have, there's all these phases.
Yeah.
And I think there as well, like there was for me also this phase of anger and like just this almost like this feeling of resentment, not just towards the system, but always also towards the other people that didn't get it yet. And even though that was me like a year before.
Yeah.
And then like later on, it really becomes clear that it's like zooming out, looking at it with a different or bigger awareness, like, oh, there's actually all these phases and all these things are the way they're supposed to be. And it's a balance, because I also think that we are all where we're supposed to be. And all the things that are happening both within a specific person's life and in the world as a whole are needed to bring about this process of spiritual development.
Yeah, I think it asks for a lot of patience in a way. Because I don't believe that some people are higher or lower, and at the same time, there are people that have moved through many layers that other people haven't. So in that way, yes, there are people further in their spiritual journey, but it's sometimes not helpful at all to be then a teacher to other people that are going through that's just really narcissistic. Is that the word?
It's about letting the student come to you and not being an unwanted teacher to
exactly
other people.
And it doesn't, you give other people really the feeling that they're just be the space for them. you know. If someone comes to you, and I also had to learn that, because I also remember after my first Vipassana retreat, like I just wanted to text everyone that was struggling, you know, all the other people that I knew that were struggling. I just wanted to text them all, you need to go and do this. Or people that were really going through, you know, their awakening in their way, and giving them unwanted advice all the time is really not putting them in their power at all. You actually take away their power. You're making them feel like they're stupid and that they're less than you. And that's really a hard lesson to see at one point. You know, you have in a way, the best interest for them, because you can see their struggle.
And their potential.
And the potential. But just letting them figure it out themselves while you're present is the only thing you actually have to do. Only if you can, of course, say like, okay, you want me to give you advice, or you just want me to listen? That's also something, you know, with the voice. Yeah. You know, it's close to the ears. It's about listening. And that's sometimes the hardest thing for people to do when they start to have these insights and start to, you know, realize, you know, have this realization. And yeah, I do believe that there are people, like, I'm not sure if they're fully realized, but they're quite, you know, they are quite in contact with the divine, and their higher selves is streaming through a lot, but they're also still human.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's one thing to go to a teacher and to sit in satsang and to really, you know, when they're fully aligned with their higher selves, with God or the divinity or light. And then you're like, whoa, okay, just being in the presence of this person. It's another thing to be at their home or in their, the place where they do their teachings, and to see them as a human being. And then you can see, that they're still human, you know?
Yeah.
And it's really, you see, of course, a lot of teachers and gurus that were like, you have to follow me because I have the truth. And starting these whole movements. And then all of a sudden it all comes out that
It's a cult,
or, you know, there was actually sexual abuse and all that stuff. Yeah. And at the same time, they're still teaching, because you have put that person on a pedestal. And yes, maybe they didn't have the right intentions, and it's just the ego that just, you know, so not to make them, you know, they've done their wrong. But it's also a teaching that this person falls off the pedestal, because then you are really, the finger is then pointing towards you again.
You're co-creating that system
again.
You're
co-creating that system.
Just as this system, where we can say, oh, it's really wrong what's happening. But like, if we all take our power back, whoever it is that might have, you know, ill intentions, or at least very egotistical intentions, they can do all they want, but it doesn't really matter anymore. No. Like, now it's still this, we all give it away.
Yeah, and there are enough teachers out there with good intentions, you know, because then all of a sudden all gurus are wrong, or like you're a stupid person when you follow a guru or when you have a guru. It's like, no, just know that they're also human, and don't take every word for truth.
Yeah.
But it's a good teacher if they keep pointing you to your teacher, if they say you have the answers inside, you are your own teacher. And they don't.
A mirror, not a gospel.
Exactly, and you're just like, yeah, I have had different teachers, but there is still one teacher that I go to, and I feel safe with her. She gives a lot of tools to, you know, she works a lot with Chinese medicine as well, and she sometimes just makes it so practical, the things that we're like, ooh, really dealing with in our heads. And she says, oh, it's just your liver talking. Or it's just your kidneys, you know, flaring up. And it's like, okay. It just brings it back to, you know, to your body. And I think it's just healthy to always have teachers around you that are guiding you. I think it's unhealthy to really fully follow someone that doesn't seek support themselves. And I think that's important, that this person is also still evolving in a way, or sometimes goes to other teachers and to you know,
be held accountable, maybe even.
Exactly.
Be mirrored.
Yeah.
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 What are you still dreaming of?
What am I still dreaming of? I am dreaming of yeah, I'm dreaming of traveling the world with my music still. Yeah. And I sometimes have to tap in, like, I still this little girl that really wants to be seen. And that's also okay, because she's also a driving force for me to make things happen in life, so I don't make her wrong. But I am aware of her, that she's not fully taking over. That's a process. But I am, yeah, I am on working hard in sharing my medicine with others in that form, you know. Being on stage is what I love most. Really having this team and this support around me to bring it to the next level. That would be really nice, because I'm still doing everything myself. And it's hard work. And it's worth it, but sometimes I feel really depleted. So I'm really, craving for this support team around me also, to really, because I really truly feel and believe that we need each other. I also need people to do things that are, that then I can let go of, and to give things out of hands, and so it can really grow, and we can really reach more people to connect and to open hearts, and to before I really had this dream of, like, I want to wake up the world with my music, this tagline. And it's like, if that's what's going to happen, then that will happen. I would be really happy if I can fully be the artist, and just create and have all the energy and the focus to just make new medicine again and again, and to evolve in that, and also to do inner voice sessions on the side of that. But my dream is to fully be a world artist, so to say.
Yeah. Beautiful.
What's your dream?
Oh, I think I have a few dreams. Definitely want to reach a bigger audience with this message of love and creativity and consciousness. And I really feel like all the stuff that's happened over the years and my path that's been more and more leading me to this. And also really like to use my creativity and my talent as a filmmaker to amplify other voices. So, like, I do want to move away a bit from, like, the, like, say, corporate commercial stuff that's, it doesn't fulfill my heart, and it's great it's there because it's also sustaining me to do the things that I love. And at the same time, sometimes there's been a period where it was kind of taking over all of my film work. And I really want to move more into something that is, to my opinion, contributing more to things that are aligned with who I am. So I think they all contribute to people's lives and all kinds of things. But I really want to dive into that, and then also just starting a family, and just surrendering more into that life and stepping more into that role as a man, and becoming a more grounded and loving partner to my girlfriend, and
Yeah, beautiful.
That's the most important things, I suppose.
Yeah.
Learning to live more and more from love and surrender.
Mm.
Yeah, not thinking that I know it all, but just trusting that there's something bigger that is also helping and guiding me, and being open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not choosing fear or judgment, but love.
Yeah. Yeah, and trusting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Surrendering, trusting.
Yeah. Yeah, seeing that life is always, you know, conspiring to, in your best interests. And sometimes that's a big conspiring is a bit of a weird word, but it's like life is really, creating all these situations for a certain outcome for you, and sometimes that just takes time, and it's then something happens in your life, and then years later, like, oh my god, life was really step by step helping me and showing me and shaping in such a way that I meet that specific point where I needed to go, and to have that trust that life has your best interest, that you have your own best interest, your higher self, and yeah.
Yeah, that's also why I named the podcast Spirit Unfolding, like to really surrender to the unfolding of myself and of life.
That's nice.
And to really love that process.
Yeah.
And befriend it and not fight the things that are happening to me. But like I said, like, what if I chose this? And what if this is helping me even though I can't see it right now?
Yeah. I think that's always a good question to ask yourself in any situations. Why did I choose this?
Yeah.
It's not something you can always, answer when something happens, but it's good to really feel that.
Yeah. What is it teaching me? And I love, you're probably familiar with Peter Crone. And
the mind architect.
Yeah, he's definitely coming on this podcast at some point. And I love this part where this kind of thing that he keeps bringing back. It's like life is showing you the people and experience, or bring people and experience into your life to show you where you're not free.
Yeah.
So if you apply that lens and see like, oh, this one thing that I really experience as a struggle right now is actually here to show me that I'm not free in letting this flow through me, but I'm struggling, I'm holding on, I'm fearful, I'm not actually living with life, but I'm going against life.
Yeah.
And how is that actually serving me? It's not really doing that at all. And just learning to strip away more layers of yourself and become more empty and more full at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe a good place to end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation and your time. And where can people find you? And please share anything that's coming up for you in the coming time.
Well, you can find me, of course, on my website, leoniebosmusic.com. I have a Patreon as well. I just opened up a Patreon. I also created that because, as an independent artist, it's sometimes a struggle to sustain yourself, because all the other platforms like Spotify doesn't really give any support, except if you have billions and billions of streams. And I think Patreon is really cool because I can really be involved with my community and share more of myself behind the scenes. And just come follow me on my Patreon.
And you're going to tour as well with the film?
With the film, that's the plan. Yeah. We don't have at the moment new locations because we also need to recharge a bit, because it was a big event that we created. And of course, creating a documentary is
a lot of work as well.
A lot of work. So, but there will be a tour. And of course, eventually it will be online and all of that stuff. So,
themedicinemovie.com.
Themedicinemovie.com is where you can find all of that.
I will also link everything below, so if anyone that's interested, they can go there and find out more about you, listen to your beautiful music, and Leonie, thank you very much.
Thank you for this nice conversation.
Thanks everyone for listening, and see you next time. Thanks for watching or listening to the Spirit Unfolding podcast. I'm so grateful that you've joined us in this episode, and I hope that you've gained valuable insights and inspiration that you can apply to your own life. Please share it with your family, friends, and on social media. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.